Andrew Spooner Jr. of the band Teenage Reverse Minds on Fire, and welcome to Animated Tablature. One of my all-time favorite Nirvana songs has got to be Lithium from the album Nevermind. Now, if you're around my age, if you're anything like me, this song probably brings back a lot of fond memories about what it felt like to be young in the early 90s. It has a certain special quality about it that really captures the feeling that was in the air in the early 90s. It's also a great showcase for Kurt Cobain's unique and very personal style of guitar playing. Now, before we get started actually learning the song, there are a few things worth mentioning. There are many different versions of Nirvana tablature available, both official and unofficial, and this song in particular seems to be one of the hardest to definitively pin down. The guitar playing on the album version is very subtle, with extreme palm muting and many passing grace notes which are often very discordant. Many of the versions available tend to give a general outline of the song and often leave out many of these passing notes. Also, on reviewing the many live versions of this song available, it becomes apparent that Kurt Cobain himself never seemed to play this song quite the same way twice. So instead of relying on the various tablature that's already available for this song, I've decided to start from scratch and try to transcribe what I feel is both closest to the album version and most closely captures the spirit of Kurt's guitar playing. That being said, if you happen to notice a note here or there which you feel is different from the album version, feel free to adjust the tablature however you see fit. Now, for the original album version of this song, Kurt Cobain tuned his guitar down 2 notes in order to play the song in the key of D. For the purposes of this lesson, we'll be using the standard tuning in order to make it easier for beginners to jump in without having to retune their guitar. However, if you'd like to play along with the album version of the song, simply tune each string of your guitar down 2 notes. To make this easier for beginners, simply use an electric tuner, and instead of tuning to the open strings, tune each string to the note on the 2nd fret. But as I've said, for this lesson we'll be using the standard tuning. Now, for the standard tuning, the chord progression for this song is as follows: E, A flat, D flat, A, C, D, B, and D. E, A flat, D flat, A, C, D, B, D. This chord progression remains the same for the entire song, both verses and choruses, with the exception of the bridge at the end, which goes like this. We'll begin by looking at some of the more subtle elements of the verses of this song. Now, for the verses of this song, the guitar playing is very soft and very subtle, with an extreme amount of palm muting on the bridge. Occasionally, the palm can be lifted for a brief accent on a particular note to emphasize the rhythmic element of the riff. For example, the rhythm for the picking pattern can be a little tricky to get used to at first because it includes many accented notes which occur out of sync with the regular backbeat. One thing that might help the beginner to pick up this pattern more quickly is to play the verses section with all downstrokes. For example, another aspect worth mentioning is the presence of several fully muted notes, or rhythmic clicks. For example, here, and here. These fully muted notes serve the purpose of maintaining the sense of rhythm for the listener and making the song easier to pick for the player by keeping the hand in a constant rhythmic motion. In the animated tablature portion of this video, you'll see that these fully muted notes, or rhythmic clicks, are represented on the fretboard by green circles with X's through them. You'll also notice that these green circles are given positions on the fretboard, much as normally fingered notes would be. These positions are given merely as a suggestion of where I found it most comfortable to mute the strings with my left hand in order to keep my left hand fluid during the course of playing the riff. Now, an important thing to remember while playing the riff for the verses of this song is to not be afraid to be a little bit sloppy and maybe hit a wrong note here or there. There are many passing notes in this riff, particularly the ones played on the open strings, which can be altered slightly to give a different flavor to the riff. Once you've learned the tablature note for note, feel free to mess around a little bit and get a little sloppy and hit a note here or there that doesn't necessarily belong. You might find something that sounds very interesting. Now we'll move on to the chorus section of the song. As you've probably already noted from the album version of the song, the guitars get heavier on the last bar of the verse leading into the chorus section. For example, if you're playing on an electric guitar, this effect can be achieved with the use of a distortion pedal which has an on-off foot switch. Because I'm using an acoustic guitar, we'll represent this shift simply by playing louder. One thing I've noticed about most of the tablature that's available is that these versions tend to leave out most of the passing notes in the chorus. Most versions tend to list just the simple progression of bar chords. Without a lot of guidance on how these are actually played rhythmically in the song, and some of the more subtle nuances that are put on the chords. Because Kurt's guitar is so distorted during the chorus, a lot of these subtle nuances can be very hard to pick out. When reviewing my version of the tablature at the end of this video, you'll notice that it includes many two-string fifths played on the open strings which fill the spaces between the regular bar chords in the chorus. For example, while I can't say for certain that this is a perfect transcription of the album version, I do think it comes closer than most of the tablature which is already available. However, as I've said, feel free to experiment with this and find a version that feels right to you. Now, before we move on to the animated tablature, I want to note that the tablature does not illustrate chord slides. For example, or these chord slides are left out of the tablature, both for simplicity's sake in the reading of the tablature, and also on my end because, well, it's kind of hard to animate. So when reviewing the tablature, be sure to include these chord slides where they would normally occur. Now let's go ahead and move on to the animated tablature, and you'll be able to see exactly what notes you're supposed to be playing. In the animated tablature that follows, you'll notice that each note on the fretboard is represented by a circle with a number inside. These numbers simply represent the fingers of the left hand, 1 being the index finger, 2 being the middle, 3 being the ring finger, and 4 being the pinky. Open strings, which require no fretting, are represented by zeros at the nut end of the fretboard. And as we've already noted earlier, fully muted notes, or rhythmic clicks, are represented by green circles with X's in the middle. The finger numbers are given simply as a rough guide to the fingering that I found to be most comfortable while playing the song myself. However, feel free to play the song with whatever fingering feels most comfortable to you. Well, I'll go ahead and leave you to the animated tablature now so you can get started playing. Good luck. I'm Andrew Spooner Jr. of the band Teenage Reverse Minds on Fire, signing off. Be sure to stay tuned to the channel for new episodes of Animated Tablature, as well as new original music every week from Teenage Reverse Minds on Fire. And happy playing!